All right, Friday night here on the Paranormal Network. I'm Paranormal Network manager, sometimes paranormal investigator Jason Hewlett. And with me is Kenny W. Irish, the one and only crypto-punkologist, which is still, like, Kenny, we've known each other a couple of years. I still find that to be like the best moniker I've ever heard.
Well, thank you. And again, Gary, who named me it will appreciate that. Who gave me the nickname.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. So, Kenny, you authored a book, American Cryptids, and we've talked about that before, and you've appeared on We Want to Believe, as well as several other shows like Coast to Coast, etc. And a lot of your work has to do with how our modern monsters and, like Bigfoot, and Champ and all that date back to kind of Native American lore. And so I thought that'd just be a good springboard for a conversation. So could you just what got you interested in that subject?
The love for Godzilla and King Kong as very, very young age, and the Hulk, and somebody telling me that Champ lives in, or not Champ, but Godzilla lives in Lake Champlain, because I lived in northern Vermont at the time, and they were referring to Champ, and that's what, at a young age really got me into it. And I was already into monsters, but the thought of something actually being real just blew my 4-year-old mind. And my head kind of stayed in the 4-year-old mindset still to this day. But so that kind of, what drew me to it. But I would say, I don't want to say I got bored with monsters. But when I was looking at the monsters, I was like, okay, well, where did this all come from? It's not just, okay, well, I found out about it, and prior to that, I had no clue of what was what, this was that. So that's when I started diving into, like, where did these stories come from? Where did these monsters actually come from? These legends. And that's when I started, going past all the, just everything that I was coming across that was modern, and started flowing backwards and dived into Native American lore. And that's when, I don't want to say these monster cryptids legends started to make sense to me, but it really got me excited because, okay, now I'm kind of finding the origins and finding people, that, even claim that they lived in harmony with them and side by side with them. And there's even certain tribes that are out there where folks say that the tribes members actually looked like Bigfoot or Sasquatch, like they resembled them. And just coming up with all this history regarding these legends that we see today. We see videos on YouTube. We see all these different TV shows, which is kind of glorified in a sense, but you don't really learn anything. You don't really learn about, like, the background or again where it came from. And so and diving into the Native American lore, that really set me on a different path in researching these creatures and what they believed that these creatures were, where nowadays you've got, people like me that are writing books and trying to sell books, where, these stories and these legends, the tribes people had no reason to come up with stories. There are stories where people say, well, they came up with these stories to keep their kids from running off at night and different things like that, but, again, I mean, you're talking, every tribe across the world has come across some type of creature. And if you want to refer to Sasquatch, Bigfoot, I mean, every tribe across the world, no matter what tongue they spoke, whatever it was, they spoke of a hairy man, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. And how did they all find out about it? And so again, just, I didn't get answers, but I got more of an understanding of where these legends came from. And I really respect the Native American people, and I trust what they say. So I've been just deep in that for years, just enjoying that aspect of it.
Well, before we go on, I just want to thank Rick and Dave and Matt and Vincent for joining us here today. And Dave says the ending of Godzilla 85 made him cry, and I felt the same way. I was very sad when Godzilla died at the end of that movie, but
agreed.
More moved.
Well, the first
So let's-
Godzilla too, where the I can't remember what year was it, 1955 or 65?
54, 55, something like that.
Yeah, where Godzilla King of Monsters, where they had, well, I believe it was like the nuclear explosion. Then he comes and he takes out Tokyo, and then at the end they I don't even remember what it was, but they sent something down next to Godzilla, and like it opened up and it just ate away all his bone. It was just his bones left. That still affects me to this day.
It was a hydrogen bomb, I think, and I was just the same. It's just maybe because I had
Yeah,
the Godzilla toy. Yeah, I was just crushed. Anyways,
yeah,
so learning more about this history. So the Native Americans believed in these creatures, and they were more than just a story to them. Like you're right, because it does it transcends borders, not just like state
yes.
borders, but country borders. So what, from your research, do you think these are, Kenny? Do you think it is like a flesh and blood creature? These are all flesh and blood creatures, or do you think there's something more mythical to them?
Well, that's where if you study one tribe and their beliefs, um, you may get mythical, you may get flesh and blood, but when you study a broad variety, you get both. You really do. There are tribes where it was flesh and blood, and they were very human-like, and there were other ones where they believe, they were spiritual. And there's some that believe that they were both flesh and blood and of spirit. And obviously, hundreds of years ago, the definition or word extraterrestrial didn't exist. But if, let's say that they were extraterrestrial, that could also be seen as spiritual if they saw something there and then disappear into something. But I don't know. I really don't. And I think, to be honest with you, I really kind of lean more kind of on the extraterrestrial side than flesh and blood. I used to be very much flesh and blood, but it comes down to when you really look into it and you start having a lot of conversations with different people, and different encounters that they had. And you've got the people that when they're talking, you're just like, okay, you're not really sure if what they're saying, if they're elaborating. But then you have those people that are dead solid in what they saw. They know what they saw, but they don't necessarily know what it was, but it resembled what they believe to be, and what is described as a Sasquatch. There's been some people that have been like, they've seen it walking in the woods and then just disappear. I had one person say that they saw it was, I don't know, maybe 50 feet from them, if that, and it didn't just disappear. It like vaporized. It just kind of like fell to the ground and was gone. So one person's that they saw what they believed to be some type of bipedal creature walk behind a tree and nothing come out on the other side. But then there's other people who have said that they've seen it turn and run. They heard it going through the woods. They saw it disappear. Like it didn't disappear like in thin air. It just, after a while, they just couldn't see it anymore. So if one side was totally nut jobby, then I'd be on the other side. But these are people that are credible people. I mean, these are people that have hunted all their lives and they know what's in the woods. They know what this sound is. They know what that sound is. And some people have professional positions as well. And, they're just like, I know what I saw, I don't know what I saw, but I know what I saw. That type of situation. And are there misidentifications? Absolutely. But I don't know. I sway back and forth. And so I'm kind of to the point where I feel if I want to really, I guess, be an all around self-proclaimed researcher, that I've got to look at the different theories, because I'm a Christian and I can't believe in God, but not believe that there could be another dimension that I don't know. I'm not, a lot of people, are like, oh, these woo people. I'm not a woo guy. I'm somebody who's looking into different theories and seeing what people are saying. And again, if when you think of woo, you think of, they try to put like the craziest person you can think of in the picture. Not everybody's like that. Some people that have seen something where it looks like they disappeared, or it went through a door that they couldn't see. I mean, again, these are smart people that have, again, professional careers. There's one guy I talked to who would fall under the realm of scientist, and he's completely baffled at what he saw. And so, I don't know. I'm just babbling now.
No, sorry. I'm the same way. Like Vince King here says it's like bad luck to even mention these things. I was told I'm Cherokee living in East Oklahoma, but I know it exists. Is that kind of what you've heard as well? That sometimes even mentioning these beings can bring bad luck upon you?
I've absolutely heard that. And again, I've mentioned before, I kind of try to stay away from like the spiritual side of things because, until, I'm in heaven or somewhere else, I don't know. I'm just always kind of careful what I say and what I look into because, again, I mean, theories come up all the time where somebody had ended up saying, like when you think of Mothman, somebody mentioned to me, well, Mothman, there's many people that actually believe that Mothman is actually a demon, which a lot of people, haven't thought of that aspect of it. They think of it as like just some type of a creature, like a Sasquatch or something. So we do know that, there's goods, there's evils. And I try to, again, I guess that's kind of why I'm really kind of more into, reading up on it than really going after it. We still go in the woods. I'm with a team where we still go in the woods. I haven't been out at all this year, and I didn't make it out at all last year, unfortunately. But when we go out, I mean, we're looking for something that would hopefully be more flesh and blood than actual spiritual. But unfortunately, some of the situations that we've come across have not necessarily gone that direction. So, so.
Well, as have I, when we've gone out looking for Bigfoot too, with We Want to Believe, and we go on the intention of finding something flesh and blood because that's how you have to work. Although we broke out a spirit box, and when you were with the woods, the two part of there, and we started picking up words in the woods where there's no one else around. So paranormal, there's a good chance, right? And as Gerald says here, they have skinwalkers where he lives, so they can just appear and disappear at will. What what do you consider like a cryptid / monster too? I guess by your definition, Kenny, given that you kind of look at Native American folklore, does that encompass things like skinwalkers, wendigos, Mothman? Do you know what I mean? Does that all play into it for you?
It does, but like for instance, like a skinwalker or like a wendigo, a lot of people and even myself, kind of see that as a like more spiritual, not necessarily like a flesh and blood type of thing. But if you've got like, the Enfield monster, like a lot of people see that to be flesh and blood. But I would say, as far as like, say like the Wendigo, I just recently did a lot of research on it. And one thing, I mean, everybody knows like the story behind it, and that you end up eating human flesh, you become cannibalistic, and you turn into Wendigo. So have you ever heard of the Wendigo psychosis?
Well, it's where someone like believes that they're turning into this creature. Am I right?
Right.
Like, they're not actually, but they believe that they are. It's a psychological thing, and it could be from consuming flesh, or it could just be from belief, right?
Right. Well, when we were looking into it, because I've also because you can find it, like online, and in some cases it's actually a recognized medical term. So it's kind of like when somebody's kind of alone for the longest time and they're starving and they end up eating flesh, like they kind of go crazy. Now, when you look at like pictures of like the Wendigo, like your modern day Wendigo, they're 12, 14 feet tall. They've got, like a deer horns coming out. But if you go back and you go further back, it really like the Wendigo didn't look anything like that. It was literally like an emaciated human being that was constantly bleeding, even biting itself, trying to get the taste of blood, eating other humans. But the psychosis is saying that they kind of lost their mind, like it was a long winter. So the Algonquins, like it came from the Algonquin tribe. But the theory with why a lot of folks have claimed to encountered a Wendigo and survived, and it having horns, some of the theories come back because it's the Algonquin tribe that some of them are, they're not just running around naked and emaciated, like they're actually covering themselves, and that they've covered themselves with deer skin. And the fact that, they're 12 feet tall or 14 feet tall, some people believe that, what they've seen was actually somebody in a tree. And that's why it looked like it was so tall. Like when they saw it, they turned and ran, or it was dark, different things like that. But at the same time, I also can't close the door on the fact that people still today claim that they've had an encounter with what they believe to be a Wendigo. And we're not just talking about like, tribes people. We're talking about just your regular Joe out in the woods and coming across something that they see that's 10, 11 feet tall, that's got horns on it. And they were just lucky enough to survive, I guess, and get away. So again, the theory doesn't cover the fact that we're still seeing Wendigos to this day. Now, let me ask you this question: Wendigo,
Sure.
Wendigo. So I heard three different ways of saying it: Wendigo, Wendigo, and Wendigo.
Here in Canada, we go Wendigo.
Wendigo. Okay.
Wendigo. Yeah,
Okay.
but I think it just depends where you are. Like there's different, you know what I mean? Different places will say,
Right.
like I've heard it pronounced all three ways myself. So
Yeah.
Rick here is sort of saying our elders always talked about the gates of the earth, and more than just Sasquatch are able to come through them, in terms of like it being, a multi-dimensional. And same here in where I live, the Kamloops First Nations talk about that too, that there's many different beings that pass through these portals between such, which I think is interesting. We've talked a lot about like on the ground creatures, but I'm thinking like aquatic creatures here, Kenny. Like we have Ogopogo here near Lake Okanagan, near where I live. And I mean, the natives, the Aboriginals would like make sacrifices to this creature so they could cross the lake, right? So there's, even with these aquatic creatures, they're sort of talking like water demons and things like that. From your research, what have you heard about them?
I've heard many different names. I've heard, water demons, like you said, aquatic devils, different names. I'd heard, it was about 6 or 7 months ago, I'd heard it was a real, I'll try to remember it, but it was a really, it was one of those names that when you hear, it's just like, wow, that's pretty cool sounding. If I can remember in the amount of time before we close, I'll say it. Even if I'm in the middle of talking about something else, I'll be like, I'll just throw it out.
Go ahead.
But yeah, there's definitely different creatures that have serpentine creatures that folks have made sacrifices to. And again, like I'd spoken on it at the beginning of the show, Loving Champ, I mean, to me, if I have to say that something would exist and be flesh and blood, I would say that it would be some type of aquatic sea creature, monster, what have you. But as far as I'm concerned, I would say that it's probably the most probable that could exist if I had to pick one out of all of them. But yeah, no, there's some crazy names. I don't even understand sometimes how they come up with some of the names. It's again, I mean, if you look at a lot of like in my book, like a lot of the they call them dragons too, as well, like water dragons, aquatic dragons, sea dragons, some that were near caves, they called them cave dragons. So it's just a variety of names and just different legend that falls underneath it. I don't even know if I just answered your question. That's
No,
how I am.
for sure. Like,
Welcome to my
'cause I've had, like,
welcome to my head.
well, it works like my head too. It's like going from one channel to the next very quickly, right? Was it Robin here is sort of saying, I really believe in them. I do. I do too. I have no, because I think our mutual friend Ken Gearhard really came up with
Yes.
some good investigations into these lake
Mhm.
monsters, especially how they're along the same latitude,
Oh yeah.
very much similar lakes. I can see, like, I believe that there's a good chance all this stuff is
Mhm.
real, right? The woods are
Yeah.
big enough and vast, and I liked your, like with the Wendigo. It could be a person with a psychosis. It's the same with werewolves, lycanthropy. People are
Mhm.
diagnosed with lycanthropy. They think they're turning into a
Yeah.
wolf. So I think it's not always a paranormal explanation, but I think all of it lends credence to this stuff being real in
Yes.
one way, shape, or form. Bernadette has a serious question about why alien gods would reincarnate into human beings. I'm a bit skeptical. The Sumerian kings, oh, I can't even pronounce that, conform writings are accurate. They lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Plus, the American government has now disclosed that UFOs exist and that there are around 3,600 different types of alien observing us and interacting with governments in certain countries. This would explain skinwalkers, Sasquatch, and numerous other unexplained phenomena. Now, I think we kind of talked a bit about extraterrestrials
Mhm.
as a topic, and I know many Native Americans believe they come from the stars, the star beings,
Mhm.
right,
Agreed.
Kenny? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So do you
Yeah.
think this could be something from, like, say, another planet? Do you know what I mean? Like,
To be honest with you, I definitely would lean more that way overall, because you know, like when the government like released like the reports, I mean, I didn't see anything in it where it said, you know, by the way, aliens exist. I saw that they recognized it, and they finally came out and said, yes, UFOs exist. We see certain things that we can't necessarily know exactly 100% what they are. But the thing is that for the fact that we know that, you know, UFOs exist, and then the government's now finally come out and said that they do, there's more to it than just, okay, something flying through the sky. Okay, it's because if it was just something flying through the sky, they'd be like, oh, yeah, they don't exist. This is just a meteor. We know what this is. We know what that is. But if they're going to admit that, you know, that these objects in the sky actually exist, and they're not calling it what we already know, again, like a meteor or a star or whatever, then there's something to it. What is controlling that aircraft or that object that's in the sky? And um I mean, it's in my opinion, I also can't look at the universe and say, okay, we're the only intelligent life form anywhere. And you know, for pilots to come out and say, hey, I saw this, okay, this doesn't make any sense, you know, it flew right by me. I mean, it's a higher intelligence. And you know, the government probably does know a lot more about it, and they've probably, you know, a lot of people talk about is it raptors, you
mhm.
know, living on Earth and, you know, disguising themselves. I was actually at a it was in uh, Kingston. I think it's Kingston, New York, somewhere in that area. And I was at, it was like kind of like a, I don't even know what you would call it. Like people were there. It was like a naturalist type of get together area. Uh, and everybody was like, there was vendors there, they were selling stuff, but there was a lady that came over and talked to us. She said that she knows that raptors exist. And she said, this is how you can tell. She's like, if you're talking to them, she's like, they will like blink continuously. And she's like, always
Oh,
watch for
really?
that. I mean, she came across, like, you know, she just watched like every episode of the X Files, and you know, every like she came across like that, and a little out there, but she was also saying some interesting things and things that I had never heard. But also some things that I had heard, and then she also brought like some theories to it, and why. Like she said that she actually worked for an organization where it was, I think she said it was a newspaper organization or some type of media news, and like her boss was like some executive or whatever, and she was one, and her boss ended up realizing that she knew about it, so they got rid of her because so again,
Wow.
it kind of got crazy and kind of went down a rabbit hole. But at the same time, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, well, what if she's that crazy person that's actually right? I don't know.
It makes you pause,
Again,
right?
right. I mean, I don't let people kind of reel me into things, but I will listen to what they say and, take into consideration what they say, because again, I don't want to jump on any bus and be on this bandwagon over here and be on this bandwagon over here. I want to be able to have conversations back and forth. And, but yeah, I definitely think, a lot of these sightings and a lot of, these creatures that we see, definitely could be extraterrestrial. And here's the thing. If you say extraterrestrial can still be flesh and blood.
Yep.
So maybe just not necessarily how we see it, different colored blood. I don't know, but something extraterrestrial isn't seen as, I know the definition of paranormal, but a lot of the time when people say paranormal, they're talking about like ghosts. But paranormal kind of spreads out. And so again, it very well could be flesh and blood. And, you're thinking of, the whole Star Trek, Star Wars, beam me up Scotty type of scenario. Again, I mean, if a pilot in a jet can see something over him and then it just take off, I mean, they've got to be able to have some type of technology to beam themselves up all over the place. And then as far as the Sasquatch theory and Sasquatch being extraterrestrial, again, why not? I mean, many folks have claimed to see what they believe to be some type of extraterrestrial spacecraft, and then what they described to be a Sasquatch after. I have talked to some people that have said that they've actually seen a Sasquatch actually walk up a ramp into a spaceship type of craft. Maybe they saw it, maybe they, I don't know. But I think that there's some type of a connection. There has to be something. And even if it's not every creature that we see running around on Earth, there's got to be some type of association there.
Well, I agree. Gerald sort of has a point here. Skinwalkers have nothing to do with aliens. They evolved from Navajo witchcraft during the long walks we had to. Exactly, right? So just because
I agree.
we say one thing could be, doesn't mean everything is, right? It's just, these are all different theories. And I would take stuff like Skinwalkers and the Wendigo stuff. And I'd even Bigfoot too. They're so different. They're just, different, right? Like it's a different thing, different belief system behind it. It's fascinating stuff, Kenny. I think we could talk for hours about this, but I know where you are, it's getting late. But this could go on. But any sort of last comment you'd like sort of to make in regards to this topic though, Kenny?
I just, anybody that, loves the subject of these creatures, go back, look way back into history, and the legends behind the monsters or creatures, what have you, is so much more interesting than the actual creature itself. In my opinion, how they came about, and really take some time to look into it, because again, the native people, they've documented so much, and again, they're just, I put so much of what I don't want to say believe, but what I research, I just put a lot of trust in what they say, because they mean what they say. And again, a lot of what we know nowadays should be credited to their family passing these legends down from generation to generation and telling us what they are.
I agree completely, and every sort of Aboriginal I've spoken to and heard their stories behind these stories behind these stories. It's fascinating, and it's a very rich culture and a rich belief system that you can't just discount. I give it more credence than a lot of other things that people come up with to talk about when it comes to
100%.
All right, well, Kenny, thanks for joining me tonight. It was great to have you on and talk to you again. Thanks to
it
everyone
was
else for
good.
joining Kenny and I. Yeah. And I am back next week talking haunted heirlooms. So please tune in next Friday for another Friday night chat. Until then, stay spooky.